It seems today everyone is talking about the new Galaxy Book 2 Pro, but no one ever asks its younger brother, the Galaxy Book 2, how it's doing. It has feelings too, which is exactly why today we are doing a detailed review of the latest Galaxy Book 2 mid-range laptop. This guy is rocking Intel's latest 12th generation 1235U i5 chip, 8GB of LPDDR4X memory, a 256GB solid state drive. We also of course have Intel's latest generation of Iris Xe graphics on board, Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5.1 standards, and additionally this is of course a 15-inch full HD non-touch display. There is a lot to talk about in terms of this laptop, so I'm gonna quit my yapping and get on with the review. Thank you for watching. Samsung, like the rest of the PC industry, isn't particularly creative when it comes to packaging, so you basically have a plain old cardboard box with a white print of the laptop and the Galaxy Book branding. Anyway, once you remove the content seal and proceed to actually open the box itself, the first thing you'll be greeted by is the actual laptop itself. And remove all that protective packaging, here is the crown jewel. But more on that in a quick minute. Past that, you have a USB-C to USB-C cable, which of course is good news, meaning you get USB-C charging right out of the box. And unlike HP, Lenovo, and Acer and all other brands, Samsung provides you with this really nice 45-watt charging brick. It's puny, it looks like a phone charging brick, it's convenient, easier to carry, and I just love the fact that they do this. Past that, you have a little paper envelope, and inside here you will find the quick start, warranty, and regulation information you need to get your laptop going. The first thing you'll notice with the Samsung Galaxy Book 2 is just how premium this looks for a mid-range laptop, at least upon first impressions anyway. So about 2/3 of the laptop has a aluminum casing. On top of that, it has elegant, sharp, linear edges, which gives it this really minimalist yet premium look again. With that said, there is a moderate amount of weight at 3.4 pounds. It's not the lightest 15-inch laptop, although it's not excessively heavy either. It's pretty much average all things considered. Now, starting with the top side of the laptop, like I mentioned, you have a metallic finish over here, no particular texture. It does attract some degree of fingerprints, but it's not nearly as bad as its older brother, the Galaxy Book 2 Pro. Also, you'll notice on the left center corner, you do have some Samsung branding here in a very subtle manner. I personally like the low-key look Samsung went with here. The rear side of this laptop is really straightforward. You essentially have a nice long linear finishing, and you have a massive piece for the actual hinge mechanism in the center. Now, the sides of the laptop are rather interesting. On one side, you have a USB-C non-Thunderbolt port over here that does support power delivery, of course, which is required for charging. You have a HDMI 1.4 port, you have a USB-A super speed port, you have one more non-Thunderbolt USB-C port that also has power delivery capability. On the other side, you will find one more USB-A super speed port, the good old headphone jack, and interestingly enough, you have a micro SD card reader. The bottom side of the laptop essentially has a plastic finish, and to my worry, you have an excessively small air intake vent over here, which I do believe impacts thermals, but we'll talk more about that later on. You'll also notice on either corner, you have a speaker grill, indicating this is a bottom firing speaker setup. Sound test to follow later on in the video. Unfolding this laptop brings joy to my heart because you have this beautiful metallic inner chassis. It just makes the laptop feel that much better. You'll also notice you have a massive trackpad at the bottom center. This thing has plenty of surface real estate. It does have a plastic surface finish. However, it feels tactile. There's very little flex. Generally speaking, I don't have any complaints with this piece of hardware. The keyboard, on the other hand, kind of gives me mixed feelings. So on one side, you have what I think is a decent layout, a averagely good amount of surface area per keycap, but when you actually start typing, you quickly realize the keycaps do feel a little finicky, which can take away from the typing experience because the actual keystrokes are quite tactile and nimble in nature. Now, the real disappointing fact here is that you don't get any backlighting on this keyboard. This is now the second generation mid-range laptop by Samsung that does not have backlighting. Nearly every other major competitor is now offering backlighting, which really makes Samsung stand out here in a not so good way. Now, thankfully, since this is a 15-inch laptop, you do have the inclusion of a 10-key pad, and you'll also notice you have a built-in fingerprint scanner, which doubles as the power button. Hinge quality is on point with this laptop. So not only is there a very limited amount of wobble, it has the right amount of stiffness and it can go to a near 180-degree tilt, which is very impressive for a non-touch laptop. Display fitting is pretty good as well, so you have a relatively thin chin at the bottom with some Samsung branding. You also have pretty narrow bezels that look nice, modern, and sleek. Additionally, you have a pretty small forehead at the top. Unfortunately, at the center of it, you'll find a less than ideal 720p webcam, which somehow manages to struggle even in broad daylight settings and produces noise. I cannot in good conscience recommend this for online dating. The display here is of average variety itself, so you have a resolution of 1920 by 1080 or full HD if you will, a standard 60Hz refresh rate. You do have a IPS panel here that has fantastic viewing angles and a matte finish anti-glare screen. Now, unfortunately, Samsung has gone out of their way to hide the sRGB or NTSC metrics for the display, and I couldn't find any verifiable sources. But if I had to guess, I would say this laptop has a sRGB rating of somewhere between 50 to 70%. Colors are fairly washed out. I most definitely would not recommend this laptop for color sensitive activities like photo or video editing, for example. In terms of brightness, you have a peak brightness of 300 nits, which isn't too shabby. It's enough for most indoor settings. However, if you are going to be using it in bright outdoor settings, you're definitely going to find there's a fair bit of glare that comes upon the screen due to the lack of brightness. Given the fact that this is a i5 series processor, I wasn't expecting a ton of horsepower. However, I was moderately impressed by performance. So day-to-day tasks like web browsing or watching 4K YouTube videos are obviously going to work in a super speedy fashion. However, even moderately demanding tasks like 3D modeling or 1080p video editing are totally viable on this laptop and are actually a pretty smooth experience despite only having 8GB of RAM on this base configuration. Even extremely demanding tasks like 4K video editing with multiple layers are still a relatively viable experience. Granted, you will get your fair share of frame drops and the occasional lag, but it's still a possible experience on this device. Even gaming is pretty impressive for what it is. So games like Fortnite, for example, can actually give you a healthy 30 to 60 frames per second at medium settings with performance mode on, which isn't too shabby all things considered. Unfortunately, thermals are not nearly as impressive on this laptop. So we found under unrealistic peak loads, this laptop can hit an average surface temperature just shy of 47 degrees Celsius, which is uncomfortably hot for a laptop of this size. But more realistic heavy loads will yield you around 41 degrees Celsius, which is still definitely towards the warmer side and well above the average for machines in this class category. Now, fan noise is even more terrible. You can hit levels of up to 50 decibels of noise, which comes dangerously close to gaming laptop territory. And it doesn't take a whole lot for the fan to get triggered. Literally, the act of transferring files is enough for the fan to briefly spin at maximum RPM, which again is slightly concerning in the long term. In terms of battery life, you can get up to 9 hours of usage on a single charge at 50% screen brightness doing activities like web browsing, watching Netflix at 1080p, using the speaker at approximately 40% volume level, and of course doing other activities like light photo editing. Of course, your mileage will vary depending on the kind of tasks you're doing. Now, as far as speaker quality goes, it is, like I mentioned earlier, a dual speaker setup. It is bottom firing. You have a sufficient amount of volume, and there's a relatively limited amount of distortion at higher volume levels. Have a quick listen for yourself.
Do it on my own, so I gotta get through it. And the only thing I know is to love what I'm doing. Never give up, never slow, till I finally prove it. Never listen to the no's, I just wanna keep moving. Keep my head up when I act, head up, that's a fact. Never looking back, I'ma keep myself on track. Keep my head up, staying strong, always moving on. Feel I don't belong, tell my thoughts to move along. Push myself to be the best, die with no regret.
Here in Canada, the Galaxy Book 2 retails for approximately $980 Canadian. Now, unfortunately, since it's not out in US yet, I can't comment on USD pricing, but I will update it in the description once I know it myself. With that said, the Galaxy Book 2 is what I consider to be a decent laptop. So on one side, Samsung has provided us with a excellent exterior build. It feels premium and actually blows a lot of the competition out of the water. You have what I consider to be a healthy selection of I/O port diversity, even though we don't have Thunderbolt 4 standards on the USB-C ports. Additionally, I also appreciate the trackpad and keyboard quality, and the hinges on point as well. Some things holding this laptop back unfortunately include its mediocre display, but perhaps even more so disappointingly, the lack of simple backlighting on the keyboard, given that this thing is almost $1,000 starting point here in Canada. On top of that, I would have also appreciated better thermal management, which isn't a huge flaw, but can have implications in the long-term wear and tear of this laptop. Putting all those things aside, I still think this is a great productivity laptop. If you are willing to compromise on the flaws I mentioned, you'll definitely get your money's worth from this machine. I will leave a purchase link in the description below should you want to check out this laptop. Once again, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the content, make sure you hit that like button and sub to our channel. It genuinely helps me grow. Catch you in the next one.